My name's Ian Margetts. I'm from a company called ASOS.com. For those of you who don't know us, we're a largely UK-based fashion retail company with our mission to be the #1 fashion destination in the world. Before we get on to the POSHChef piece, I'm going to talk a bit about the context of that, though, within terms of ASOS and its DevOps and ALM journey. So 3 things before I start. The first thing is I pace quite a lot when I'm nervous. So for anybody at the front, it's been like a game of Wimbledon for you. I'm going backwards and forwards quite a lot. Second thing is I'm not going to push ASOS today, obviously, but if you would like to buy something, then feel free to go on the website. We've all got a bonus to have at the end of the year. And the last thing really is I'm not here for recruitment either, but if you like what we're doing in terms of our DevOps journey and you work in the UK, then feel free to find me afterwards. I'm looking for good DevOps guys. So, firstly, some background on the company. So, we've been around about 15 years as an organisation. We focus largely in Europe to start off with, and we focus almost exclusively on 18 to 25-year-olds as our target market. So we're very, very focused in terms of our business model. Since 2012, most of our sales have actually been non-UK based, though. We now sell to about 240 countries around the world, and say about 55% of our money now comes from around the world. Growth has been significant, as you can see from the slides. In 2006, we were only taking about 18 million in revenue. Last year, though it isn't actually on there, the 2014 figures, in 2014 it was just under $1 billion. So in terms of growth, that's 50 times growth in about 8-9 years. Now, the reason I say that is it gives us a challenge in terms of IT. We've got to be able to respond to our business and keep our short-term needs of that business growing year on year to try and get us through to the next year. But at the same time, we've been trying to meet the long-term needs of our organisation so that actually in 3-5 years' time, we're in the right place. We've always sold, as I said, we've always sold around the world, but since 2012, we've been really, really pushing out and changing that journey. From a business point of view, we're now pushing out multiple warehouses around the world. We've now got warehouses in America, Australia, France, Germany, as well as offices in many of those countries. And what it's also driven is a change in our IT. This morning in the keynote speech, they talked about dual IT, and that's where we now are. We were on a large monolithic code base, very low testability, high levels of coupling, so it's really not appropriate for going to the cloud at all. And now we're driving now to much more SOA-based architecture, sort of microservices, so that actually we can scale ourselves appropriately. But the challenge that gives us, though, really, is the fact that obviously we're now in this dual world, and that's now where our real focus is trying to be now to try and resolve that situation for ourselves. So, for any of you that are in a retail model, you've probably got a fairly similar pattern to this. Every time we have 2 major peaks in the year. We have a summer peak and a winter peak, and the summer peak is generally about as big as our winter peak the last year. Now, of course, because of our growth, that's going up significantly. What that means is it forces IT into a sort of set of behaviours or set of ways of working. We've only got 6 months between each of those major peaks before we've got to deliver the next wave of the major IT to get us through that peak. And because of that step change is so big, you've got to do some quite fundamental changes in that time. The other feature we've seen in the last couple of years, and this is a gift from the Americans, so thank you very much, is Black Friday. 3 years ago, didn't exist in the UK. It was a nice phenomenon. We used to sort of look at the news in America and go, you stuffed. 2 years ago, we started to see it a little bit, and it caused a few problems. Last year, it was absolutely mental. It brought down pretty much every retail website in the country in our space. Luckily, we stayed up, but it did mean that for that day, we had something like 300-400% our normal load. And that's, again, changed the way in which we've had to think about our IT and to think about our delivery. Oh, does that come up? Okay. So, in development, so just to give you some stats around the organisation. So, when I joined around 2008, we were a very small organisation. We only had 2 development teams. It was a fantastic place to work. We now have 25 in 2014. Massive expansion. And those teams are now across 3 locations, one of which is in India. So it gives you all the additional challenges you have of cross-site working. Our environments have increased from 2 in 2009 to about 150, and that's probably actually north of that now, but about 150 in 2014. And those environments were permanent and very unrealistic. We've moved them to be templated, but they're largely manually created still. and they're not entirely realistic. We've sort of re-envisioned them about 3 or 4 times. I'm sure many of you have done these about, you think about what your environments need to look like. By the time you've actually done them, the world's moved on again. Our code base, as I said, is a very large monolithic code base, or was a very large monolithic code base. Again, I thought we had this term, but apparently it was in the keynote this morning, the ball of mud. And we called it this for years, we called it the ball of mud. It's been a real albatross around our necks. But now we're moving, say, to much more SOA-based architecture. But we've got those challenges of transitioning between the two and trying to live in both worlds. Our releases have gone from 12 in 2011 to 306 at the end of last year. So again, we've managed to do a lot. We've managed to move ourselves on significantly. And quite a lot of organizations would say, well, 306, that's not bad. The problem we've done is that we've actually done that a lot through people and process. The technology hasn't been there with us. So the way we've done more releases, we've thrown more people at the problem. We've now reached that limit where we can't do that anymore. And we've actually got to fundamentally shift in how we operate. So this is what I always say to my guys, and I actually only found the graphic this morning. We're trying to change the wheels on the car while it's going along. I've actually seen the video to this, and they successfully did that. But that's largely what my job is. Our business has now got to the point where it now expects that we can do 306 deliveries a year. In fact, it's saying, why can't you do 400? Why can't you do 500? But we're at the point where we've got to fundamentally step back and look at what we're doing. And with all that re-architecture, we've got to instill the full DevOps practices across the organization to enable us to actually do this and actually then move on faster. I'm trying to target us towards 1,000 releases a year. But you can't do that at the time you're also trying to do the day job. So the automation drive. So the last 3 years, we have been on a journey to try and improve this automation. About 3 years ago, we started stepping back and automating our deployment. And for the size of the organization we were at the time and where the technologies were at the time, we decided we weren't going to go with an off-the-shelf product. Obviously, there were ones out there, but they were quite expensive and weren't that mature at the time. So we decided to go with a bespoke one. We went with a Saki and PowerShell-based solution. For testing, we obviously hit the automated testing side a bit with NUnit and Selenium. And on environments, say we templated our environments, went to a cloud provider, templated those environments, made them repeatable, but they're still manually created. Because, again, we've got all this legacy code base, we couldn't quickly push those up. And so an environment for us takes, realistically, between a week and 2 weeks to provide at the moment. That's the fact today, how long it takes to provide an environment and actually get it working and stabilized. So we're nowhere near completing the story. So we're now focusing on sort of 3 key areas. One of those is deployment. We're going to merge what we've done currently with our framework, our deployment framework, with off-the-shelf tools. We're now going to look at saying, what can we leverage quickly? And try and push that ability to deploy back into the teams as quickly as possible. So that our current DevOps function ceases to be the bottleneck. That's a really key aspect for us. Testing. We're going to bring things like perf testing in-house. We've externalized that up to now. It doesn't meet our needs. We need to bring that in-house so that we can bring it earlier in the life cycle. Push left, as the sort of standard phrase goes. And put some additional focus back on our automated testing. We tend to have drifted on that since we first started that implementation. The technology's there, but the practices aren't there. And we're going to look at environments again. So really look at automating those environments so that we actually get them to a point where they are ready on demand when the teams need them. And this is where Chef really starts to help us. So, as I said before, our environments are not lifelike enough. They take too long to provision and they're very manual. As I said, it's several days. The reality is that could be a week and a half to 2 weeks. And they're very expensive. I've got 150 of them, which are stood up permanently. We can't schedule them, we can't downtime them. And the fact is, teams won't give them up because it takes them 2 weeks to get them back again. So as a result, they will hoard them as much as they physically can. They cost me a fortune. So what we're going to do with Chef is obviously, it enables us to envision those environments, to get them the way we want them to look like, and then actually provision those really quickly. So that and if we want to change that again, we can then make that react to that a lot quicker. We can schedule downtime. We are largely a Monday to Friday organization. So why do we have our environment standing up, burning resources at the weekend for us? We want to get those down. And we can improve key areas of testing. So things like creating performance test environments on demand. But also be able to create clean environments for rollback testing so that teams have confidence that when they test their code, it's against a known environment, because right now it isn't. So this is the segue before I get into Russell's piece on POSHChef. So why did we do that? It was really there to develop our chef journey. And the key thing that it addressed was the fact that ASOS is largely a Microsoft shop. Russell's going to go into this more in a minute. We don't have the skills that we need around chef. We don't particularly want to acquire those with the skill base we got. We are fully Microsoft. And we took this opportunity to open source that so that we can actually get that out to the wider community so that other people can realize the benefits we have. We felt it was a really good thing. Obviously, it's led to us being here, and it's really good that we can share it today. So I'm going to hand over to Russell, who's now actually sort of go through a demo of what he's done with POSHChef. And I think you've got 3 scenarios to look through as well.
Hi everyone. As Ian said, my name's Russell Seymour. I was brought into ASOS to do the provisioning piece. POSHChef is a small part of that. Part of the provisioning is with the provider we have at the moment, is to build up the machines in the environment. And once those Windows machines are sys-prepped, POSHChef is installed. So, just want to go through a couple of things. This might be teaching people here to suck eggs. Do people know what desired state configuration is? Are we going to have a show of hands at all? Okay. So good, about 50% of people. So obviously it's Microsoft's configuration system. The solution we've come up with addressed, shall we say, a management tools gap between how you look after DSC and how DSC runs. There are no management tools for it, and it is quite, in my experience, it was quite difficult to get going with the push server and everything like that. So, quick straw poll. Given that we're at ChefConf, I assume that everyone here is using Chef. Is that true? Yeah, pretty much so. Who's been using Chef on Windows? Okay, and who's used the new providers for DSC through Chef on Windows? Okay, so about 5 or 6 people. Okay. So, the background to this. As I've said, we wanted to use DSC. It lacks management tools. We'd like to use the Chef paradigm without the Ruby overhead. So we're installing Windows servers. There's a perfectly good scripting language on there. It's PowerShell. Why do we need to install something else that's got a Ruby? That would mean more work for the sysadmin guys to potentially maintain that. And as Ian said, ASOS is a Microsoft house. I think that when I arrived there, I increased their Linux capability by 100%, 1,000%, infinity%. So to me to go in and say, right, we're going to use Chef, they were okay with that, but then how do we get the teams to adopt it? So with the PowerShell base that they've got with their deployment tools, it made sense to try and come up with something. Wanted to use configure machines with an existing paradigm. The idea of having node attributes, environment attributes, role attributes, you compile your code and then it gets executed. So you get your compile phase and your execution phase, as in Chef. Fits very nicely with Chef and DSC. And finally, we wanted to have something automated, reliable, consistent, and repeatable. Now, by consistent, that can mean it can be wrong, but at least it's consistently wrong. And that's easy to fix because you can change the cookbook, put it into the source control, and you push it out. So that was the background for that. Now, the original ideas we had would be to come up with some bespoke tooling using DSC push. As I said before, we tried to use that. I know that there are some changes coming in DSC that makes that installation path a lot easier, but it wasn't something that would fit with us. Bespoke PowerShell solution, write something not from scratch, but maybe leverage Saki, but then we had all the problems with the configuration. Where do we get all the settings from? So, and the final idea, which led to POSHChef, was integrate Chef and DSC. So we wanted this bridge between the two. So the feature set we have at the moment is that it's no mistake that the features in POSHChef mirror those in Chef Client. It copies Chef Client where it can. The whole idea of the plugin architecture, the hierarchy of attributes, all of that, that's there. So it works with Chef 11 and Chef 12, including hosted Chef, so you can have organizations in there. In fact, the demo videos I'm showing you use hosted Chef. We've talked about, it brings attributes, cookbooks, and roles to DSC. Community cookbooks can be downloaded from the supermarket and can be extended to work with POSHChef. So, as I've said, POSHChef is 100% PowerShell. There is absolutely no chef code in there. So how do you get a cookbook, community cookbook to work? Well, what you can do is that, as you know, with a cookbook, when you upload it to the chef server, it uploads everything in the files area. So what we've done is mirror the chef cookbook structure in the files for POSHChef. And what you do in there, that's where you write your PowerShell. And what happens is that if you have a community cookbook and you name your recipes the same as those that are in the RB files, then you'll still be able to select that in your chef server. And then when PowerShell or POSHChef runs that on Windows, it will run the PowerShell version. And when you run it on Linux, it'll run the Ruby version. But you still got the same cookbook. Okay, you've got different recipes, but you could see how you could have two teams working on the same cookbook, working on those different things. Plugin framework, so the plugins that you have for it, for maintaining the nodes, the clients, the users, the environments, the data bags, the searching, that's all in there, and it's extendable. So if you have something that you need to do in your organization, you can pull that back, you can put that into an area, and the POSHknife will pick that up. There's handler support for tests and reports. Interestingly, this morning on the keynote, Chef announced an audit functionality. This is almost what the test is doing. I built this in, and we've got some cookbooks that I open sourced along with this. And one of them is a pasta cookbook that comes along with a handler. And the idea being is that you could run integration tests through POSHChef after the DSC run is complete, so that you can actually then fail your run or fail that box if something hasn't happened. So, for example, you could check that the MSDTC registry key is set correctly, and that uses Pesta. So that sort of idea. There's report handlers. Again, I've got some handlers that work with Redis and Elasticsearch and Logstash. And there's open source cookbooks to enhance functionality. Chocolatey, for those that don't know, Chocolatey is to Windows as Yum is to Linux or Red Hat or whatever you want. The idea about having a software repository. And there's the POSHChef companion cookbook that allows you to schedule POSHChef to run under the task schedule. It doesn't run as a service. It runs as a scheduled task, however long you want it. The default is half an hour, and it just runs as a scheduled task. That was a lot easier than trying to build out of PowerShell a service that ran. So we put it in as a scheduled task. So just a quick thing about the way that DSC works with POSHChef. So we're leveraging the technology built into Windows. Recipes are built with the configuration keyword instead of the function keyword. And as you can see here, this looks like a very simple function or configuration. We pass in a name and to do the typical hello world. Now there are two stages here. The right host, where it says hello world, would come out during the compilation because it's outside of a resource. The message in the log will come out in the bow stream in the DSC run. Because, like Chef, it compiles things up, and if they're in resources, then they get run at execution time instead of compile time. And as I said before, handlers aren't running with DSC, they're run after by PowerShell. So I have 3 demonstrations for you. They're all videos. The last 2 demos I've done in the UK, they were both live. And yeah, I couldn't type properly, and things didn't work quite so well. And it took a long time, and people got bored. So the longest video of these is, I think, 3.5 minutes. The first demo is managing cookbook from scratch using POSHChef. What it will do is install IIS on a box using Windows feature resource. So if I just get my mouse over. Okay. So we're going to create the cookbook. As I've been saying before, POSHChef has got a configuration thing, like Knife does, and it tells it where your chef repo is. There's the function invoke POSHChef, which is alias to POSHChef when you install the module, and it's got the cookbook create, and it tells us where we've created that cookbook. This here shows where the augmented POSHChef cookbook structure in the files is, and that's what we'll be editing here. So we're now updating the default recipe using the Windows feature in DSC to install IIS, make sure it's there, and that the feature we're going to install is web server. We update the metadata file, which is a PowerShell data file. When POSHChef uploads this cookbook, it will check that the metadata RB file exists, and it will use this data. If you download a community cookbook with a metadata RB file that's already there, it won't overwrite it. So that's how we can maintain that the two exist together. And on this one, we are now going to upload the cookbook. Yep, good. You can see my typing while I was doing these demos. It's checking the recipe stubs exist. So if we'd added another recipe in, it would create a blank RB file, which would be syntax checked properly, so it would go in. The things with the red lines that you saw there were the files it had to upload, and the green were the ones that the files it didn't. So this is just showing the on hosted chef, and that I want my node demo1 to run the recipe demo. We're going to add it in, and then we have that there. And then just to show that it's speaking to hosted chef, you can see our recipe has been listed. Finally, we're going to execute the run list on the node. And this is just invoke POSHChef. And this is a 2008 R2 box running Azure. It's going off, talking to chef, pulling down all the information. It's synchronizing the cookbooks. It only synchronizes what it needs. It uses checksums, so if you have multiple cookbooks. And you can see that all the data that's been run through, sorry, that was a bit quick, but the DSC is run in a run space, and we capture the verbose stream. So all of that information comes back. So you can see the start and the skip, the test target resource and the set target resource. And unfortunately, that's gone to a blank page, and I was hoping it would set at the end. But basically, you saw from that last one that the web server had been installed. This next one takes that cookbook further and integrates a third-party resource into that cookbook. And what this one does is it actually uses it will download the Logstash. Sorry, not community cookbook, this is a resource. So we're going to download a resource. We're going to use the Stack Exchange resources to manipulate the time zone on the server. So we've downloaded this into the POSHChef directory, into the demo cookbook. There will be some plugins that handle that. It's just because it was Git and everything, I didn't have time to do it. But here what we're doing, we're adding into the attributes file, which is again a PowerShell data file, the time zone we want. And because we're in America, I said put it West Coast, Pacific Standard Time. We're going to create a new cookbook, a new recipe, in the cookbook called Time Zone, and we're going to use the Stack Exchange time zone resource, and you can see we're passing in the node values, and then we will upload the cookbook and configure the run list, because the first demo showed you that it was editing the run list in the host and on hosted chef. I'm going to just use the command line here. It's uploading all of the Stack Exchange resources. You can see all the red that's going through. That just means it's got to upload them. Green means that it's fine. It knows about those. So we'll just check that it's. We're now going to set the run list for this node. You wouldn't believe that is 50% faster than I type, but there we go. Even with editing. So we're just telling it we want to recipe demo IT zone. You can see that it understands the same construct or the same format that Chef understands. And we're just showing that that demo box now has the right recipe. So we're showing time zone. So now we will run the run list, invoke the run list on the box. You can see that this was a couple of days ago, 2 minutes past midnight in the UK. Again, it's on 2008 R2 in Azure. And we will import the module and we'll run it. Now, as I said before, there is no Chef code in here. This is purely PowerShell. But it's talking to the Chef server, pulling down everything it needs. It's getting the attribute information. We're running through. Obviously, because this is the first time, it's pulling all the Stack Exchange resources down. And that's why you're seeing that sea of information. When you run this again, it wouldn't. There, it's moving the Stack Exchange resources into the right directory so DSE can pick them up. And it's finished. And then when we look down here, hey, we're 8 hours back. So we've picked up the right time. So that was a simple thing to show how the system will use other resources. And finally, my last demo is how we can extend a community cookbook to work with POSHChef. Now, this is one that uses Logstash. So we'll download the cookbook and then extend it to you so we can use POSHChef, and it will make Logstash work on Windows. So let's see that. So last week I added a new plugin which talks to the supermarket API. So you can download a cookbook. Built into POSHChef is the 7-zip DLL, which uses 7-zip to unpack that cookbook and extend it. And you can see how we've got the POSHChef structure as well as the normal Ruby structure. So we'll go into the Logstash and go into the POSHChef area, and we will update the recipe, and we will tell it we want to install Logstash, and I want a configuration document. And now actually, what isn't clear there is that Chocolatey is going to install Logstash. As I said before, there was a community cookbook release, or I've released a cookbook for Chocolatey, which manages all that, and the attribute says install Chocolatey says install Logstash, and that's how it will come down. So I can't remember where we are now. So I think this is setting the uploading the cookbook and setting the run list. And you can see there it appears to be a community cookbook, so it won't overwrite the metadata file. So that's how to preserve the information of the cookbook, but keep everything together. So again, lots of files going up. And what are we doing now? Yeah, assign the recipe to the node. So again, this is using POSHKnife node set run list. Here you'll see that I'm going to add in the Chocolatey cookbook, which take care of downloading, installing Logstash. And then we add the Logstash cookbook. Now you'll notice here, I haven't changed anything in the way the syntax is. You just say recipe Logstash, that'll go up to Chef. And if you'd set that on a node in Linux, that would obviously install it. And if you install it in Windows, POSHChef runs it. So here we go, the last bit of the run. Import the module. Invoke it. And it will go off and do its work. Now, what I have done is I have edited these videos so that the time it takes to do the execute here, this bit, there's actually quite a long time because this output comes out after it's done the work. So you can, I think in there is about 120 seconds. So that's cut, but it's not as immediate as this seems to be showing. You can see here our template file has been updated. So we've got the feature of templating as ERB in Chef because of Ruby. It doesn't have the functionality multi-line yet, but that's a feature I'm putting in. For the ease of this, I've created Logstash is going to read from one file and output to another file. Again, I could have made it do this work, but I wanted to show that the service was installed and the two files. Here we'll write in hello ChefConf into the input file, close that, and we can see that in the output file we've got hello ChefConf. So a bit of a contrived idea there, but you can see that using this you can install Logstash on Windows using the existing Logstash cookbook. So, a couple of things. There are some pitfalls. Write host or any interactive commandlet in PowerShell will break DSC. I've been speaking to a few guys about that this week or the last 2 days, and there might be something that happens there. All issues are being logged on to GitHub. So if you want to download this and everything, then by all means, go for it. Let me know any problems. The module path, that's currently using Windows System 32, Windows PowerShell v1 modules. I wanted to move it out of there, but I've had some problems with discoverability between the resources and POSHChef, so for the moment that's staying there. We wrote that there are resources and supporting cookbooks. I wrote our own chocolatey cookbook. There is another community one. Had the same issues that we did, so essentially we ended up creating a zipped up version of the chocolatey install, which doesn't track versions, but at least it means it works. And there's some missing features, some plugin definitions are missing from POSHChef. Attribute hierarchy isn't there. It understands nodes, roles, and environments, but there isn't set override, and it's only default. You haven't got set and override. I was going to mention something then there, but soon one of the things I'm building is making it so that this is done through AppVeyor, so that there will be a module that will go into NuGet and chocolatey, so you'll be able to do install like that, because at the moment it's a clone from GitHub. I'm hoping to do that in the next week or two, so there will be actual proper installers that you can use. And last slide. So code is on GitHub. The wiki's on GitHub. I launched a website this week, which will POSHChef.io, which will have, it's a pretty bland site at the moment, I'll tell you now. I haven't had a chance to upload the documentation, but the idea is the documentation will be up there with full text search. That's helpful, get rid of that error. So you have full text search on there. There'll be other previous downloads, and I'll have some videos and things on that. And if you need to contact me, there are my details, the Twitter handle. And thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
We have a few minutes left for questions, if anybody has any.
Okay, stunned silence. Okay.
Oh, go on.
Would be the furthest away, wouldn't it?
So how do you feel about if Chef were to support dialects and PowerShell could be one of those instead of, you know, not being able to use any community cookbooks that are already written?
Yeah, I mean, that's something I found out about this week. I was speaking to Steve Morawski about it. He alluded to it. They were saying that doesn't necessarily mean that Chef is going to start writing PowerShell cookbooks. Quite how it's going to come about, I don't know. I'd like to make it work. I'd like to make this work with a lot more stuff. The honest answer is I don't know at the moment. Whether it'll destroy this, whether we can make it work with it, the answer is I don't know.
All right, and also like the Invoke Posh knife stuff is pretty cool. We might want to talk about like having that as part of Chef, because like a lot of people don't like going through Ruby and they'd like to invoke a PowerShell commandlet. So
yeah, well that was one of the main drivers, is that when you use Chef client with PowerShell, you've got Ruby calling PowerShell exe to run. So it's not a first-class citizen. So it's very difficult to test it and do whatever you want with it. So we're trying to by doing this, we're trying to bring it up and come up with the ways of testing your cookbooks and everything like that.
all right, cool stuff.
Thank you.
I was just wondering if you've noticed any performance benefits or negatives in switching over to DSC versus running the Ruby on Windows?
One of the things I have noticed is that communication with a Chef server is much quicker under Windows by using POSHChef, because you're not having to unpack Ruby, do all its interpretation, and then talk to the Chef server. So in terms of talking to the Chef server, because it's using .NET classes, that is much quicker. So you see, if you do POSHknife node list, that comes back pretty much, not immediately, because nothing's immediate, but quickly enough for it to be usable. And certainly when you're downloading the cookbooks, they seem to come back a bit faster. In terms of the running of it when DSC is run under Chef Client or when it's run under DSC, that's really down to the DSC engine under WinRM. So that comes down to the resources of the box. So you don't have so many performance benefits there, but certainly talking to the Chef server is quicker under Windows. Cool.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.